Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In this video, let us continue with our discussion on the box model and discuss about how we can perform sizing of elements in CSS. Let us head over to our box model.html file and create a div right after this div, and let us add a class attribute on it, so dot, and give it a class of container, and let us leave it as blank. Now let us head over to our styles.css file and define a CSS rule for this div as well. So right here, let us define a CSS rule for the div with the class of container. So for this we can use the class selector. So here we say period and the name of the class, followed by our pair of curly braces that will wrap our CSS declarations for the element that is referenced by this selector. Let us set a width of 100 pixels, a height of 100 pixels, a background color of maroon, and let us give this a preview in the browser. So here you can see all the style properties that we defined right here are getting reflected in the browser. Also the styles that we had defined for the div in general in the previous video are also being reflected. So let me remove this border that we are having around our container div by setting the border to none. So border, set this to none. So let us give this a preview in the browser, and now our border is gone. Now let us inspect this box, and you can see that the width and the height that we explicitly set to a value of 100 gets assigned to the content area. Then we have our padding, which we are getting from the above CSS rule that gets applied for all the divs, which was 10 pixel top and bottom and 20 pixel left and right, which is coming from right here. Then you can see we have no border around our padding area because we just set it to none, and then we have a margin of 20 pixel all around. So the main thing you need to understand here is that the box that represents the element gets bigger when you apply properties like margin, border, or padding to it. Now this width and height that we are defining here is not for the entire box that holds all these areas. The width and the height is for the content area that this box holds. Right? Now let me demonstrate this. Let us set the border on our box. So comment this line and add a border 5 pixels solid and black. And now let us give this a preview. So if we now visualize the element, you can see that now we have a border of 5 pixels all around the padding area and the content area, right? Now did you notice here that our box has now become a bit bigger, and the simple reason for this is that the width and the height is applied only to the content area, right? We can always control the size of the padding to make our content more breathable, but this increases the size of the box, right? If you increase the thickness of the border, this also increases the size of the box. I hope this makes complete sense. Now let us do a simple exercise. Let us find the actual size of the box that represents this div with the class of container. So to calculate this, have a look at this. We have a left border of 5 pixels, a left padding of 20 pixels, then the content area with the width of 100 pixels, then we have the right padding with 20 pixels, and a right border of 5 pixels. So if we add these values together, we come up with a value of 150, right? So 5 plus 20, 25 plus 100, 125 plus 20, 145 plus 5, 150. And you will get the same value if you compute it in the vertical direction for this box. So to conclude, the width and the height of the content area is 100 pixels and 100 pixels respectively, but the width and the height of the entire box encompassing all these areas is 150 pixels and 150 pixel respectively. The margin is not used for this calculation because it is something that lies outside the border, and all that margin property does is that it shifts the box representing the element away relative to other boxes. So let me demonstrate this. Let us add a margin of 30 pixels. And let us go back to the browser. Here you can see the margin is now 30 pixels for this div with the class of container, and it has shifted its position with respect to the original position. In the original position, we had a margin of 20 pixels, which we had defined in the previous video. So to conclude, even if you apply the margin property, it doesn't change the size of the box. So that is the reason why it is not considered while computing the overall width and the height of the box. Now these calculations over the time can become a bit cumbersome and complex, so we have a CSS property to explicitly set the size of our box that represents the element. So now in order to make the explicitly specified width and height, the width and height of the complete box, we can set the box sizing property to border-box. So here we can say box sizing, set this to border box. And now let us give this a preview. So now you can see the box has shrunk, and now let us visualize it. To verify what I said, pause the video for a minute and compute the height and width of the box. Comment down below with your answer and click to play. Now if you compute the new width of the box, you can see as a result of the box sizing property set to border box, it has now shrunk to a value of 100 pixels for the width, and the new height becomes 100 pixel as well. So 5 for the left border, 20 for the left padding, 50 for the width of the content area, 20 for the right padding, and 5 for the right border. So it sums up to 100, and you get the same value of 100 along the vertical direction. If you notice carefully here that the content area has shrunk to a width of 50 pixels and a height of 70 pixels. But this is not the recommended way of doing this. Instead of applying it on each element, we can define it globally for all the elements of the page for which we are writing the entire CSS. So this is where we can make use of the universal selector that is represented by asterisk. So let us head over to our CSS file and comment this out, and here we can use the universal selector. So the universal selector selects all the elements, and for each one of them we can set the box sizing property to border box. So this gives us the same effect. Now let us discuss a problem that you can face when you have a lot of content inside a container. So in this case, the container cannot fit the entire content, and that is when overflow takes place. So let me demonstrate the overflow problem with the help of an example. So head over to your boxmodel.html file and add a new div with the class of container. Now right here, let us add a paragraph with loads of lorem ipsum. So p lorem 50. And now let us give this a preview to see what we get. And this is what we get. You can see that the content is overflowing the div. So this means that the div that we have defined here is not big enough to hold the entire content, right? So to fix this problem, we can make use of the overflow property that we have in CSS. So by default, we have the overflow property set to the value of visible. So if you set the overflow property to visible, you can see nothing happens because it is the default value. So let us use the overflow property and set this to hidden first, and then give this a preview. Now you can see that some of the content is now stripped off. This is not what we want. So let us try another value of the overflow property. This time let us set this to auto. Now you can see we are getting a horizontal and vertical scroll bar, and if you scroll, then you will be able to see the entire content. So using the overflow property, you can determine whether you want to show the extra content or whether you want to hide it or you want to show the scroll bar or not. So this was all I wanted to cover about sizing elements and overflow property. If you liked the video, do give it a thumbs up or comment down below if you have any query. Don't forget to share the video with your friends and colleagues, and let's catch up in the very next one.